Harold and the Purple Crayon just came out in theaters, but does it offer enough imaginative insight to work for everyone? Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen Harold and the Purple Crayon. If you like it, don't like it, or somewhere right in the middle, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're already, join Film Culture Community, where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. But going right into the synopsis, as Harold grows up and becomes more adventurous, he steps out of the pages of his book as he's on the hunt for his creator, as he journeys on to discover what the real world is like with his friends Beaver and Moose. And getting right into positive, first off, I'd like to say that my expectations were low, but my hopes were high for this film, and I was pleasantly surprised just what we got out of it. I'm not always into comedy, and most of the jokes worked. There's a clever insight with the way it's meant for family fun, how Zachary Levi just performs his duties well with the characters. He's a lovable actor, the way he accentuates his charisma out onto the screen, and this coming off of Shazam is just blending in well with the way he works his charisma, his enlightening fun self to the screen, and what we get out of that just bleeds out the great comedy while also having an emotional side when there's a darker tone to the film as a whole, and there's just a sense of enlightenment and excitement where it's just a feel-good movie meant for the fun, meant for the charisma, and just the premise alone coming off sort of as a sequel of sorts to the short story that from David Crockett. What we get out of this just doesn't ask for too much. It breaks some rules of what it's doing, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it has to follow too much strict rules with just what it's asking for its imagination. And the CGI as a whole, well, there is quite a bit of it does perform itself pretty well for the most part, feels more fleshed out than I would expect it to be for this type of film, for just what it's pulling off as a whole, pulling off this imaginative sense of itself for what it's going with Beaver as well as Moose, and pulling them into this world as well. And the story starts off rather quickly with, once you're going into this live action hybrid animation period, where it starts off with animation and goes off a unique style that's also 2D as well, but goes into the real world rather quickly, which takes us on the journey, on the adventure in a quick manner that feels well deserved and doesn't feel like it's rushing itself too quickly, while also earning its place in developing its characters, in bringing us to the right place at the proper time, feeling like the writing is just on point with what it's really asking for the story as a whole. And overall, the message of imagination and believing in yourself is just a great theme that really hones in well with the idea of Harold and the Purple Crayon, who he is, and what the power of the crayon has to be held. It's just fun, pulls in some great ideas based on the book, and pays homage to the book very directly with how it blends in with the story, and just pulling that into the real world, while just having someone like Zachary Levi makes sense for the role of Harold that's grown up within the book, and just the way they pull that off is just fun as a whole, and something that has something great for the family as well, for taking it for what it is, not too seriously, and it's just good to be had as a whole. And going to the mix elements, there's certain moments later on in the film where it pays in some generic tropes that you kind of expect to take into this sort of story. I expected more of that, so it doesn't bother me as much, but it did take me out of the sense of creative juices that the first half had to have told, and there's certain character tropes that I just wasn't as into. Some inconsistencies with the look of the color of what the Purple Crayon can do, or what certain ideas get pulled off in general directions that I wouldn't necessarily spoil for the purpose of a review. And it just is a lighthearted film that certain things may not be for everyone. It can feel generic at some time, but I feel for myself personally, I connected with the story a lot more than what certain audiences have really been expecting for what this story has to behold. There are choices and direction that this film takes that are fairly generic and take on some things that we're relatively familiar with from other movies or stories. That's not particularly bad, but feels safe for certain routes of where it ends up. And the villain as a whole, while they do have a good role for him, it does feel more juvenile in the sense of direction it takes, and certain motivations for that villain just feels weird with the direction and what they're wanting to have him do, what he wants to achieve, and certain ideas that doesn't fully feel like it's matching the plot of what the story is generally asking for it. I don't feel it's necessarily that horrible, or at least for me that enjoyed most of the film, the charisma, and taking the film for what it is and not having expecting too much out of it. There's something to be had with, while it's not great as a villain arc, and what he wants from where he's headed, it's relatively alright for what you're getting, and you're getting laughs out of him and certain ideas along the way for where you're heading with the story once it comes full circle, and the imagination that bleeds out, even if there's certain choices with the family and ideas that other characters you meet up with are relatively unrealistic. They still take it in directions where, yes, once you understand what the story is asking, you can have a good sense of fun with what it is asking as a whole, even if it isn't going to ultimately work for everyone. So that's just my personal thoughts on Harold and the Purple Crayon, which I have to rate a simply 7.5 out of 10, which I had a whole lot of fun with. And I'd like to know what you thought of Harold and the Purple Crayon. If you're going to see it based on my review, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're not already, to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.